This is the second half of the lecture on Chapter 7 about verbs. This lecture is going to be about verb consistency and verb choice, choosing the verbs that you use in your writing so that you're using better verbs. So first I want to talk about verb consistency. And to understand this, you need to understand verb tense. Verb tense refers to when in time the action took place. It could either be past tense, present tense, or future tense. For our purposes, we're only going to talk about those three kinds of verb tenses. When you are writing, you want your verb tense to be consistent, meaning if you're writing in the present tense, then all of your verbs should be in the present tense. If you're writing in the past tense, then all of the verbs should be in the past tense. You don't want to switch verb tense for no reason. Now, if you are relaying a story, some of which happened in the past and some of which is happening currently, or if you're referring to something that happened in the past and then commenting on it in the present, then you would and should change verb tense. The point of this is, if you're changing verb tense, it should be for a reason and not just because you forgot what tense you were writing in to begin with. So, for example, I have a paragraph behind me that has inconsistent verb choice. It goes back and forth between past and present tense for no reason. And that's wrong, it's incorrect. So if you find you're doing this in your own writing, you need to find your verbs, choose a verb tense, the one that makes the most sense based on what you're writing about, and stick with that tense. So let me walk you through this. We went downtown and then we watch a movie. Later we met some friends from school and we all go to the mall. For most of the evening, we play video games in arcades. It was a typical but rather uneventful day. I am giving a personal narrative that happened in the past. If I'm writing about something that happened in the past, whether it's historical or a personal narrative, I should write in the past tense, and all of my verbs should be past tense verbs. So I will go through, find my verb, identify the tense it's currently in, and make sure it's in the tense I want it to be in. So we went downtown. Here's my verb, that's past tense, so that's fine. And then we watch a movie. Here's my verb. Watch is the present tense, it's happening right now. I need to make this past tense, meaning we watch a movie in the past, so I would change it to watched a movie. Later we met some friends, that's already past tense, from school, and we all go to the mall. Go is present tense, it's happening right now, so I would need to change it to the past tense. We all went to the mall. For most of the evening, we play video games. That's present tense. I need to make it played video games in arcades. It was past tense, a typical but rather uneventful day. Now it's consistently in the past tense. Another part of verb tense that you should be aware of is something called the literary present tense. This will become important when you're especially taking English classes in the future. If you are writing about a piece of literature, a novel you read, a short story you read, and you're relaying events from that story or from that novel, the convention is you write about it in the present tense as though it's happening now. Because the theory behind that is the literature is always current, it's a living, breathing thing, so you would always write about it as though it's happening now. Because I could read this book 10 years from now or 10 years ago, so you refer to the events in the present tense. So I would say, Gatsby enters the party and looks around for a friend, rather than Gatsby entered the party. I would write about it as though it's happening right now. Okay, I want to talk to you now about active voice versus passive voice. And this has to do with verb choices, choosing the verbs you use in your writing. There are active verbs and there are passive verbs. And for the most part in your writing, you want to write with active verbs because they're more powerful versus passive verbs. Let me give you an example. Okay, so the meaning behind these sentences are essentially the same. The difference is in the verb choice that I'm using. So first I have Mo Vaughn slammed a home run, and then I have a home run was slammed by Mo Vaughn. So here's my verbs, here's my verb. This first sentence is the active voice. Active voice means the subject of the sentence is the one doing the action. He is the doer of the action. So this is active voice. Down here, the home run is not doing anything in this sentence. In this case, move on is the person doing the action. But because he's listed after the verb in the object part, the subject of the sentence is not doing anything. It's having something done to it. That makes this a passive verb, passive choice. So again, you want to avoid passive voice in your writing and try to stick with active voice. Whenever you can, choose a sentence construction in which the subject of the sentence is the one doing the action. It's more powerful. The only time you would use passive voice is, number one, if you don't know who did the action of the sentence. So for example, my car was stolen. Was stolen is passive voice. The car is not doing anything in that sentence. However, if you don't know who stole your car, then you would have to leave it in passive voice. Or you could rewrite it to say, a thief stole my car. Another time in which you would only use the passive voice is if the receiver of the action, so in the object, is more important than the doer of the action. And the example from the textbook is, my neighbor was permanently disabled by an irresponsible drunk driver. You want that sentence to be about the neighbor versus about the drunk driver, so in that case you would choose to use a passive voice. But again, it's about making a choice, and usually you want to use active voice rather than passive voice. The last thing I want to talk to you about is using strong verbs. So oftentimes people in their writing will use be verbs. What I'm talking about are be verbs, like is, was, were, are, and. These are really, really common verbs that people use in speaking, definitely, but also in writing. But they don't show anything. They don't paint a picture. They don't create a mood. They're not very helpful in terms of accomplishing what you want to accomplish with your writing, which is creating a tone, making a point, being strong, being forceful, having voice. And these don't accomplish that. So it's very difficult to eliminate this entirely from your writing, but you want to avoid it as much as possible and minimize the usage of these kinds of words. So let me show you a sentence that has a be verb and show you how I could revise it to make it stronger and use an action verb instead. Okay, so here's my sentence. Regina is the leader of the race. So I'm using a be verb, is. And again, that's kind of boring. It doesn't paint a picture. It doesn't make a strong image for the reader. So you want to try to revise this to instead have a verb that's much stronger and much more action-oriented. So Regina leads the race would work. You could say Regina finished the race faster than others. So you want to try to revise so that instead of using a be verb, you're using an action verb. So this entire chapter was all about verb choice and using your verbs. And this section covered having consistent verb usage, so having your entire essay be in past tense or in present tense, not switching back and forth for no reason. And it was about your verb choice, so using active verbs rather than passive verbs, and using action verbs rather than be verbs.